Now in the middle of one of the most significant eras in automotive, Carl Anthony amplifies the minds and voices behind this historic transformation as the host of AutoVision News Radio.
Mic check 1, 2.
All while coming to terms with middle age, father loss, and what it means to be successful in Detroit.
What would you do if you had an entrepreneurial spirit, a passion for informing people about the latest trends, technologies, and data points as they relate to electric vehicles, and a golden doodle who is possibly related to Chewbacca? Well, if you're Elena Ciccotelli, you create one of the most dynamic, insightful, and popular podcasts in the automotive and mobility industries. As the host and producer of the EVs for Everyone podcast, Elena is often at the crossroads of the biggest questions, challenges, and variables in electrification, including how all players across the EV ecosystem will meet consumer demand and provide top-notch service throughout the entire ownership lifecycle. If we take a step back and focus on EV education and all stakeholders, OEMs, dealerships, and customers, everyone can win with less friction on all sides, Elena writes on the EVs for Everyone podcast website, because ultimately, she continues, perfecting the EV customer journey is where achieving the net zero target begins. During her time at Lyft as the company's automotive partnerships director, Elena pioneered innovative solutions for dealers and fleets alike, bridging the gap between new mobility options and traditional automotive retail. Her goal was to reimagine this often adversarial relationship and change it into a symbiotic one that solves the greater needs of automotive retail customers. Elena was recognized as one of the top 20 voices in automotive for 2025 by Automotive IQ and was selected as a mentor for the Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability Mentorship Program for Winter 2026. Brands that partner with the EVs for Everyone podcast benefit from Elena's years of experience, especially at industry events, where she often creates content on site to help companies amplify their messaging above the noise. As we begin with Elena, she recalls her time at Lyft and how the EVs for Everyone podcast came to fruition.
Moving at the speed of mobility, this is AutoVision News Radio with Carl Anthony in Detroit, Michigan.
Lyft gave me my big break. I will say I started at Lyft in 2016, 2017. It was pre-IPO Lyft, and we were out there just creating new product. I moved over to the Lyft business side of the house, and we did a concierge product that was sold to dealers. So this was my kind of entree into automotive retail. And from there, I really got to know a lot of the really huge players in the space, in the retail space, everything from the CarMaxes to the Carvanas to the public dealer franchises to just dealer franchises that had 10 rooftops to 5 rooftops. So it was like kind of a little bit all over the map here. But in that time, I was fortunate enough to run a partnership with Rivian. And this was, if we're connecting the dots here to why did you start a podcast about electric vehicles, I think this is kind of the point in time I can point to and say, this makes sense. This was the part in the journey where I got really excited about the technology. I thought it was one of those things where you're like, man, this is going to change everything.
Sure.
And so once I kind of dug in more on that partnership, I not only learned more about the actual like nuts and bolts of electric vehicles, but also because, as you know, Rivian is direct to consumer, does not use the dealer franchise network. The age-old debate of how are we retailing these cars? How are we selling these cars? How are we bringing these cars to market? And that was always an intriguing question to me. And so I spent a lot of time at Lyft and then stayed in corporate for quite some time. And at the same time, I'm very entrepreneurial. And I thought, well, I just had this little smidgeny bit of an itch. And I thought, wow, let's try doing a show about electric vehicles. I know there's a ton of electric vehicle content out there, but what can we do to make it engaging, fun, more human, more personable, and take out the jargon and a lot of the acronyms.
Right.
So that was
Right.
the side gig while I was still in corporate. About a year and a half in, I said, all right, well, I'm doing this and it's getting a lot of traction. The momentum is huge. Now I'm going to do it for real, or,
Yeah.
just keep sort of doing it. So you
Right,
can see
right.
what option I chose.
Yes, yes.
So here we are.
Do you remember the day you got the spark when this idea came to you for EVs for everyone? Do you remember that day when you're like, there's so much content, a podcast would be fitting? Do you recall that day?
I don't think it was a specific day,
Okay.
but I think it was kind of a series of events. As you know, I go to a ton of conferences.
Yeah.
I speak at a lot of conferences, and this was really before I was on the quote unquote speaker circuit.
Sure.
I'm attending the general session, I'm attending the keynote session, I'm attending the workshops, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I am so bored. Like, the content is great.
Yeah.
I can get about 5 minutes in and there's no connection.
Sure.
So maybe that was on the delivery. Maybe that was the way the panel was constructed, or whatever the case may be. There's got to be a better way.
Right.
I cannot be the only one in this audience who thinks that this is boring.
Right. Right.
So I need something else. If I'm going to stay in this industry, it cannot be this boring.
Right.
So I think it was a series of events. Was that the spark? I don't know. To quote Billy Joel, it's we didn't start the fire, but maybe that was when the fire started.
Right. Right. Well, Elena, I have to give you a compliment because you have accomplished that. You have taken this subject matter, which is very interesting, but could be considered a little bone dry and boring. You've taken this subject matter and you have energized it, my friend. 20 years ago when I was in broadcasting school, and I think it's funny, we're now at the age where we can say something happened 20 years ago, and it really did.
Yes. Oh.
20 years ago when I was in broadcasting school, there were certain people that just had an energy about them on the microphone, whether that was doing radio or television. I was more of a news kind of a style broadcaster, a typical radio style broadcaster. But then there were other people that brought it to a higher level energy. So that might have been like a hot AC format for radio, or would have been certain television segments. So when I look at you as EVs for everyone, I see you through this lens, this sort of broadcasting lens, and you have this incredible ability to bottle that energy and excitement and then put it into a podcast. I love it. I subscribe to your podcast on Spotify, so your new episodes come up on my phone automatically. But you've done that, my friend. My compliments to you for that.
Thank you, Carl. I wasn't planning on needing a box of Kleenex here, but no, thank you. That means a lot. Well, because as you know, content creator, podcasters, it's one of those things where you have to take a giant leap of faith.
Right.
And you have to just be like, well, I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
So there it is, because I don't know how to be anyone else.
You have been you. You have EVs for everyone. You are right in the epicenter of this EV space, my friend. So you're talking to these industry experts. You're looking at new trends. You're examining the latest data points. You're always doing this type of stuff every episode. And so in all the work that you've been doing with your podcast, Elena, what are some key observations that you have right now about the EV space that are important for us to see?
This is such a huge question, Carl, and it's a question I ask myself every day as I'm scrolling the news, as I'm looking for the next thing to cover. It's changing rapidly.
Sure.
And so I'll just give you a quick snapshot, a quick example. So just in 2025 alone, global EV sales, they're projected to surpass 20 million.
Right.
Okay. We're beyond like, is this a thing? Yeah, it is a thing.
Right.
China is leading the way. We've had the tariff situation come into play. We've had federal incentives are going away.
Sure.
But at the same time, we've had innovations like solid state batteries and vehicle to grid technology. You've had some pretty key moments, especially in infrastructure, which funding, sadly, through the federal government, NEVI, is kind of nowhere to be found. So we are seeing a smidgeny bit of a slowdown / pause on infrastructure growth, which in my opinion is a darn shame. But we have this global dynamic that's not only shaping pricing of these vehicles, but that also brings into question, are people still interested in getting an EV? That's a question that I continually ask myself every single time I bring out a new episode. And I will always go back to the fact that it comes down to monthly payment.
Yeah.
People are very much interested in, yes, is this the right vehicle for me? Does it give me all of the benefits that I am looking in a vehicle? And how much is it going to cost me? Because I'm not trying to have a bank note of 84 months.
Right. And so in some ways, it's just like an internal combustion engine vehicle. It just comes down to how much is this going to cost me, and can I get a good interest rate or get a good payment?
Yeah. And is it going to work for me? Is it going to work for my lifestyle? And look, we've come a long way from the early days of conversations around range anxiety. And I think we've made really vast improvements from that initial conversation. I remember back in like 2022, I think I did like 5 episodes in a row just talking about range anxiety. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can. This is, but it's a real thing. Yes, it still persists today, but I think in a little bit of a different way. It's not as pervasive, I would say. So there are a lot of things, especially nuanced in the electric vehicle market. But to your point, yes, it is similar to an ICE vehicle when it comes down to payment. Am I leasing this? Am I buying this? And is it the right vehicle for me?
And then with that, more often than not, Elena, you have a study on your podcast that you are breaking into data. I know you do this with Experian quite a bit. You're always highlighting the latest trends and data points, and you have a guest on to analyze and to give context to that data. Why is it important that you do that? Why is that such a fundamental component of your show?
Yes. Oh, I love this question so much because we can often get really caught up in the headlines and the clickbait. But I always like to say in those episodes, especially with Experian, it's like, let's ground ourselves in fact, because that is going to help us move forward in an educated way. The different trends that we're seeing in not only vehicle financing and lending, but then also too, what are the types of models that are getting significant traction in the United States? There are different sources where people get their news and their information. And I like to just say, this is exactly what we're seeing in terms of the data. And I don't like to stray from that. Give me the good, bad, or the ugly. I don't care. I'm not here to say EVs are good, bad, or that's not for me to say. It's for the listener to kind of go on this journey with me. But in the meantime, we're going to be informed and we're going to actually know the numbers.
With this conversation that we've been having, there's an automotive retail component to this. Elena, what does this world look like for dealerships, this EV world? What have you been seeing?
Yeah, I think it still comes down to there is a cross-section of dealers that are really great at selling electric vehicles, and then there are others where they're just still like, man, I cannot wait to get this thing off my floor plan. Even dealers participating in the secondary market for electric vehicles. Again, we can have a conversation about sales training on the sales floor. You can have a conversation about affordability, which we kind of touched on already. You know, this technology is different. It is more expensive in a lot of cases, not necessarily in all of them. My friend Tyson Jomini from JD Power, he said something really that stuck in my head. I'm like, yes, that is so correct. He said, all these automakers are striving for a price that starts with a 2 and a range that starts with a 3.
Oh,
I'm
that's
like,
an excellent.
I was like, yes,
Yeah.
that is exactly right. And that really kind of stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also another argument around, well, I'm not going to make as much money. If I'm a salesperson, I'm not going to make as much money on this electric vehicle. I'll
Sure.
make more money than on selling this huge truck. And look, not all dealerships have a commission structure that is set up in that way. I know a number of dealerships that are like that, no haggle, taking that piece out of the equation. And I commend those dealerships for doing that because that is a commitment. It's a major part of EV adoption, and it matters the experience that you have with a general manager, with your sales representative, even with just the BDC, like just getting an appointment, or what's the value of my trip, like the whole thing, soup to nuts. Like it does come down to what does this experience look like and how that electric vehicle is being sold.
Right. Right.
But gosh, what strides we made in the last, I would even say the last 2 years.
Right. That you see in the last 2 years, and just an improvement of how we're educating with EVs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, they can always be improved upon.
Sure.
And of course, there's always going to be a new tool or a gamification or a mechanism to help people really thrive in that environment and really be like that go-to EV quote unquote genius to steal something from BMW. But again, I talked about this on the show a bunch of times when I have dealers on, and it's like, yeah, my sales crew, they all have either been in one of the loaner EVs, have actually lived with this vehicle for X amount of days.
Sure.
So they can experience it day in and day out. And and that takes time.
When electric vehicles, when EVs first entered into the public consciousness, the messaging and the marketing, that maybe while it was well-intentioned, it just didn't land, or it just didn't land as well as it could have. What are your thoughts on this when EVs first came into play and the messaging around them?
The short answer here is we fumbled the ball.
Okay.
And when I say we, it's inclusive of automakers, dealers, anyone that has a hand in retail.
Okay.
Fumbled the ball completely on electric vehicles. And I'll tell you why. Because as soon as you bring politics or any type of belief in anything,
right,
automatically polarizing. In the beginning, if you remember, Tesla was out with their first couple of models, and people were like, okay, that's for Silicon Valley men who think saving the planet is great. And I will quote my good friend Mike Murphy, who I have on the show quite a bit of time. He's a political strategist and also very involved in the EV Manufacturing and Jobs Alliance here in the US. Mike Murphy always says, you can't sell cars on climate.
Yeah, right.
And I couldn't agree with him more. And what did we do in those early days? And so, like we were getting into everything was a leaf, some sort of an eco-friendly connotation. Oh, those are just for tree hugging, so automatically you like get into this headspace where you think a specific vehicle is for, I guess, a specific group of people.
Right.
And I think what could have went a little bit better was thinking about the benefits of, okay, once I have this electric vehicle, I'm no longer going to have to pay for gas. Right. And looking at the total cost of ownership and what those numbers look like. Now we are there. Now that's always in the conversation. Whenever I talk to JD Power, total cost of ownership is always in the equation, always in the conversation. So I think in those early days, it was very polarizing.
And you would have gone back and changed it just to say, hey, these are the benefits that, the cost of ownership is lower, or, the instant torque for people who love cars and they love the thrill of driving, the instant torque aspect. You would have focused more on that side of it.
I think so. And of course, range always comes into question. So range would also have to be part of the conversation. but it wouldn't be climate. It wouldn't be save the planet. As soon as we go down that road, that is a very tough road to come back from.
Right.
And again, going back to my original point, what are the things that people care about? I care about having the best car in my budget.
Sure. Exactly. Yep.
So let's talk about that instead.
There is here in Detroit, there's a number of collectors and enthusiasts I've talked to that say there's room for both. There's room for me to embrace the classic Mopar muscle, which are the dream cars I've loved ever since I was young. Now that I am older and I have a certain financial means and I can have a second vehicle, or I can have maybe my collector cars, but then I can have a daily driver. I want that daily driver to be an electric vehicle, or if I have a regular internal combustion engine vehicle, say a small, just economical SUV, now that I'm a little older, I've got some money to spend on a quote unquote fun car, and my fun car is this super fast EV, right? I talked to a number of people here in the Detroit area, and keep in mind, this is not hard evidence, this is anecdotal evidence, but I've had plenty of people say to me at car shows around here, from local car shows downriver to bigger events at the M1 Concourse, that have said, I want my classic old school V8 with a supercharger, but hey, these electric vehicles are a blast to drive. So there's a lot of people out there, I think, who have that. There's room for both, and we want there to be both in the hobby of vehicle ownership or in the greater hobby of driving.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And that was so well put, because I don't think that there's a world where it's 100% EV, nor should it be.
Right.
I think there definitely needs to be a choice, especially in the retail side. When I talk to dealers and I talk to really anyone who has a hand in selling these vehicles, they love giving people a choice.
Right. You're so insightful and intelligent, my friend. I love having this conversation with you. And I know you waved at me like to say, So, but I have to set that context because this is a podcast and people can't see. But as an entrepreneur now, so you have your corporate background, you have those skill sets. But as an entrepreneur, your EVs for Everyone brand, how do you keep yourself energized when so much of this responsibility falls to you?
I'll tell you what, I run on a lot of coffee because, you gotta wind me up and then just let me go because it takes a lot of energy. It takes, and I think I mentioned this before in the beginning about the content creator. So there's this thing, it's called the content creator gremlin, and he's constantly hungry and he needs to be eating all the time, kind of like my dog Bear. And so they constantly needs the content. And sometimes you can be like, all right, content gremlin, I got you. Like, we've got a feast. We got a feast of content this month. Oh my God. And then you might hit a spot where things are not firing on all cylinders, but doesn't matter. Content gremlin is still hungry.
Right.
So,
right.
So again, how do you deal with it? How do you set the expectations, especially around solopreneurship? And I think it's important to take breaks when you need to. Otherwise, and I've experienced this myself in corporate. Yes, corporate burnout happens. I've lived it. And so I am a hard worker. I am a very dedicated individual, but there's also a side of me that's like, all right, you better chill out for a second, because otherwise then it's not sustainable. So all of that to say, really have a strong network in place, whether it is a support system at home, a business mentor, someone you can just trust and you can be yourself with, you can throw ideas at, and like, what do you think about this? Does this sound crazy? Do you think this aligns with my values? And really have that sounding board, because you cannot operate in a vacuum. That's what it comes down to. This is such a huge personal growth journey. I'm not new to being an entrepreneur, so I know what's required and I know what it's about, but it's always a personal growth journey. It's always like testing those sides of yourself. As I get further and further into the show and what it's going to become, and really just the brand itself, I get excited. I get energized. I shouldn't have used energized because that's very cliche and corny, but I do get energized when I think about all of the possibilities on, bringing the best content that I possibly can to the most people that I can.
And you are an energizer. That is the word. And it fits. EVs for everyone. Energize begins with an E. So I say that we roll with it. New energy vehicles are electric vehicles. So energize is the perfect word.
There we go. And my first name starts with an E. Jeez.
Oh, that's even better.
Even better.
You mentioned content, Gremlin. I feel that, my friend. We also have two other gremlins who support us in our podcasting journey. So I have Hawk, who's a rescue from the Michigan Humane Society.
Yes.
Hawk is a combination between Maine Coon and Norwegian Forest Cat, which are two huge breeds of cat. And he's orange. So there is cat hair everywhere all over my office, and he has a mind of his own. And so Hawk is always with me podcasting. For you, it's Bear, and Bear appears on the microphone every now and again. Usually he's not very supportive on the microphone. He lets out these deep sighs. I wish he would be more supportive of you. But Bear shows up in your videos. Tell us about Bear.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is a topic you're going to have to cut me short on this topic. And Hawk is beautiful, by the way. Thank you for sharing that photo of Hawk.
You're welcome.
Oh my gosh. Majestic right there. So Bear is, he's just a ball of fur, really. And the reason why I started incorporating him more into the show, the brand, everything about like the essence of what I'm trying to do is because it gives like this comic relief that I feel that is so needed in the industry right now. Things can get really heavy. Things can get really serious and really complicated and very layered and nuanced. List all the adjectives you'd like. And I think that the comedic relief is needed.
Yeah.
Being myself with this monster of a golden doodle, and he's a big boy.
He really is huge.
He's really huge. He looks like a Chewbacca that has been, like a salt and pepper Chewbacca. Like if there was an intruder that came into this house, he would just be friends with them. It wouldn't matter. You just the whole house would be robbed. Like he's not a protector kind of guy. But like that's the kind of stuff I would want to bring to this topic because it can get so heavy. So anyway, that was the thought process behind it. He's got one or two brain cells knocking around in his head. Maybe I have a couple more. So, we get
And between me and Hawk, we might have a complete set, the four of us.
There you go. Exactly. I love it.
EVs for Everyone podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Elena, my friend, again, I could talk to you all day, whether it's about the entrepreneurship journey, insights about automotive and electrification, or the joy of having a pet in your life. I could keep you here all day, but let's end with this. Let's close with this. What is the legacy that you hope to leave one day at the end of your career?
Oh my goodness, Carl, what a question. And yeah, we might even need to do a follow-up. Sorry about your luck on that, my friend. So I would really say it would be engaging content that has this human side. We've seen a lot of really cool things happen with electric vehicles, but let's keep it fun. Let's let our guard down a little bit. I know there's bullet points that you need to talk about, that you need to hit. PR needs to review it, but let's be people too, because then it gets to be a little bit more fun. And I am hoping that in just being more conversational with all of these really huge topics that we're tackling, people will be inspired to create their own content and their own type of thing that shows their weirdness. Like, look, I'm not trying to be anyone else except for me, and I know can be weird, And so I want to it's okay to, again, you got to back it up with the intelligence. You got to do your research. But at the same time, let's have a little bit of fun. And I'm hoping to leave that as a legacy.
To learn more about the EVs for Everyone podcast and to work with Elena, see the links in the show notes. AutoVision News Radio is available 24/7 on all major podcast platforms. In Detroit, alongside Elena Ciccotelli, I'm Carl Anthony, AutoVision News Radio.